Hey, it's Tweeter's Digest, the sweet baby podcast. Episode 7, Jane Listens with Her Hands. Hey, Jane, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Hi, Loopy.
What have you been up to lately?
I have been wandering around New Mexico for the last couple of months. Yeah, I saw you at Vibe Camp and kind of been doing that since then. I spent some time in Santa Fe and some time in Albuquerque, and then I got to Taos like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I'm kind of trying to figure out where I live now. Taos is a possibility.
Okay, yeah. What are you doing in Taos?
Yeah, great question. What am I doing? Huh? How am I spending my time?
hmm
Um, I am working towards getting a massage license. I just passed my licensing exam. And so, yeah, now I need to actually apply for the license. Doing a lot of like resting and relaxing, honestly. I am still not working and not in school anymore. I finished massage school last year and am like doing some training and studying here and there, and also just a lot of like resting and hanging out and enjoying Taos with my dog.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congrats on all the progress you've made so far. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm. Okay. Let's get into your tweets.
Ooh, I'm nervous.
All right. On November 7th, 2020, you tweeted, "Whoa, being a human is like so vulnerable."
uh, I was just trying to think like because I had a different Twitter account for a while and I was just trying to think like my tweets on this account don't go back that far. But the beginning of them, it was like a bunch of MMA tweets. I wonder if you ran into those in your search. But anyway, yeah, being a human, pretty vulnerable, huh? I don't know. Does that like land for you in any kind of way? I know the question is for me, not for you, but it's like a total it's like a the meme about like hitting a bong and then like having a like supposedly deep thought. It's like it totally sounds like that, but it does hit me every once in a while. It's just like, wow, just like existing and like moving around in the world and like trying to like figure out what you're doing with yourself in your life, just all very vulnerable.
No, I'm not familiar with the bong meme, but yes, everything else you're saying really hits. Um, yeah, yeah. And the cliches I feel like hit the deepest sometimes.
Right. Or like it always just sounds like a cliche to you, but then you actually like have an experience that makes it kind of like land really viscerally or something, and you're like, oh yeah, the cliche. I mean, not that this one is necessarily a cliche, but yeah, it just hits me sometimes, like when yeah, just kind of like watching people do their thing, go about their lives, especially when people like really do things that seem bold or like really try to like connect with their purpose or like really like live their dreams in a big kind of way. I don't know. There's something about that that feels very hmm, vulnerable in a nice way to me.
Mm-hmm. You say more about like what about taking big actions in particular reads as exceptionally vulnerable to you?
Yeah, I feel like there was something that was happening on Twitter recently, like that River was kind of like instigating, trying to get people to talk about like what's their soul's purpose, what's their capital M mission in life. And like he was kind of pointing at how there is something like cringe about it, at least like in our culture, just like I mean, I think Visa does this a lot, and it's part of his brilliance is like he's just very straightforward about like these are my dreams, this is what I'm trying to do. It's massive. And like, yes, I'm 100% serious, and I live that like in every way, and I joke about the outcomes I want. You know what I mean? It's like I think that there's something about that that's kind of rare, and it's easier in some ways to not take yourself very seriously or to like be really self-deprecating all the time. And there is something about like being straightforward about who you are and what you want and going after that that's like especially vulnerable. But yeah, I guess the tweet was more like widely um, applicable than that like, yeah, even just kind of trying to be a human and like make it through life at all, there is something about it that's like I don't know, kind of like you're constantly exposed to other people's critiques and opinions and emotional stuff. And yeah, good for us being humans, being vulnerable. It's not easy.
Hmm. Yeah. What this brings to mind for me is this more of a phenomenon now that, people being online, you're exposing yourself potentially thousands of people, as opposed to maybe like, pre-modern societies, it was just your village or tribe or whoever, like maybe a few dozen people. So like you're maybe inherently more vulnerable due to the nature of connection in modernity. Is that something?
Probably that makes sense to me. I hesitate to make claims like that because I like have I've done very little like anthropological studying, and I've only lived in this time period. So I try to resist the temptation to be like, yeah, things now are like way harder than they used to be. But yeah, it makes sense to me. I was just thinking this the other day and I went to the grocery store. I was just like, yeah, this isn't a thing that like humans used to do, where they just go to a place where there would be like dozens and dozens of strangers milling about and act like that was normal. Getting in a car and driving 60 miles an hour, just like day to day is like a almost like inherently scary thing that is just normalized now. So yeah, I guess there's a lot of that probably didn't used to be a thing. And the being online is like more vulnerable, like more optional, I guess, more voluntary than some of the other ones. But sure, yeah, I guess yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword that way. Like one thing I love about Twitter is that like, especially with a lot of the emotional processing that I'm doing, is that I can be super open about stuff. And especially when I feel shame around something that I'm going through or something that I'm feeling, it's a really nice place to just like get it all out there and have a lot of really supportive people engage with it or at least just witness it. And so it's kind of the opposite side of that, the nice side, but then you're also sure, yeah, exposing yourself to the not so nice sides as well.
We also have this problem in quotes where for a lot of people, like one negative comment or criticism like has as much weight as 10 positive things. So even if you have like overwhelmingly positive reception to being vulnerable like online, just like one or two criticisms can still like sting harder than the positive responses make you feel good.
Yeah, totally, especially if you are trying to come at it from a place, like if you're trying to share something a little vulnerable and it feels a little risky, then it's like you're especially in a sensitive state to like get dunked on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
This feels like overstepping bounds, but I'll do it. Is there any?
Go for it. We can always cut it out later if we
Oh,
need
so
to.
smart. Yeah. Is there any vulnerability you've shared on the timeline lately that you'd be willing to share right now?
I've been like a little quiet on Twitter recently.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I would say I probably have not. I probably have not shared anything super vulnerable lately. Yeah, nothing is coming to mind, but if something pops up later in the conversation, we can also scroll my tweets right now and look for one if you want.
Mm.
Oh, I thought of one. It's in response to the thing that, I mean, maybe this doesn't sound vulnerable at all, but like the thing that I was just talking about, River's prompt about like, what's your mission? What is your soul calling out for you to do in life? And yeah, he was kind of asking people to respond with theirs and also just to like be mindful, kind of as a mindfulness experiment. How does it feel for you to share this? Like, what's your emotional experience as you talk about this? And is this something that you can talk about with people in your life, with your friends and family? Is it like, or is it something that you hide? Is there shame around it? Like, do you talk about it with people, but then you distance yourself from it a little bit through sarcasm and like, self-deprecation so yeah, I guess I went through mine a little bit, things that I want to work towards, which right now feels like being a massage slash craniosacral therapist slash maybe other types of body work, but like really mainly there to help people heal in such a way that they can also help people like unblock their soul's purpose and their capital M mission. and also try to, whatever my healing methods end up being, try to share those more widely so that they're not only accessible to people who can come do sessions with me. So whether that's through writing or podcasting or other means. So that wasn't the part that felt vulnerable. The part that felt vulnerable to share is that like I want a partner and children. And like I don't know, that's like a pretty common thing to want, but for some reason for me personally, that feels like that's the part where I cringe with embarrassment a little bit when I share it with people. And yeah, so there are more things that I put in the tweet too. I don't know if you know Simon Saris on Twitter, but like his tweet, his account really inspires me just in terms of like sort of like everyday beauty of home life. And so like visual beauty in the small moments, the Wednesday lunch that you make at home with your family, the everything about the way that your house is designed and laid out and decorated. That's all kind of a part of what I want to build in my life, a vibrant and supportive community, animals around. But yeah, it's funny, like as I said that, all of it felt very easy and exciting to talk about, except for like the partner and children. Just makes me feel like that part is the vulnerable part for me to share.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, I admire the fact that you're, willing to share it both on the timeline and here now. Yeah, it's vulnerability is so brave. I just am always admirable of people who seem to be more advanced or further along in doing that than myself. Yeah.
Do you feel like you are able to share vulnerably on that timeline?
I guess no, since I'm thinking about it so much, right? That's what that means.
Well, to reference my tweet that you brought up, I think you're being vulnerable just by being a human. And hey, you're doing a podcast. I mean, to me, that feels like, for me, if I were a podcast host and putting out episodes, that would be vulnerable. So good on you.
Well, fortunately, Jane, no one cares about this podcast. Which is great for me personally. Like I enjoy not being like I share every episode, but no one cares. And that's good. Unironically, I enjoy like being able to share myself and also like not, I don't know.
Not having a million viewers. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, who knows? Maybe down the line, it'll that'll change.
Yeah. But you're right. This is like definitely a step function towards vulnerability for myself.
Yeah, I don't think it's even so much like about the reception of it, like the fact that you do it, you make it and put it out there. That feels like the vulnerable part to me.
Yeah. It's not dependent on other people. That makes sense. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to move on to your next tweet. On March 24th, 2021, you tweeted, "Beautiful things are coming. Beautiful things are already here."
Wow, so wholesome. So funny looking back at like different phases of your life via Twitter. What did I mean? I think I was big on mantras at that point. I think I was doing a lot of like morning journaling and mantras and stuff. And I think the idea with that one was like, there I am talking about beauty again, trying to manifest beauty in my life. So yeah, I think that it's like the idea of sort of like part one of the mantra is manifesting something new. And part two is like bringing myself back to the noticing of and the gratitude for the things in my life that are already that way. So it's sort of like, yeah, it feels like a nice balance to me of like forward looking and planning and being intentional about what I want to bring into my life, which I guess at that time was beautiful things. I do not remember what beautiful things I had in mind. And yeah, also being in recognition of how incredibly lucky I am already and what I already have in my life and how much beauty is already here to be enjoyed, because I don't want to forget about that and just be looking towards the future all the time. It's probably a little bit of a personal tendency for me. If you want to like take on the frame of like, some people tend to be a little more future oriented, some people a little more like past oriented, and then maybe some people who are very, very present often. Those people I think are rarer, but yeah, I tend to be pretty future oriented, so it's a good reminder to just like ground me in the present once I set a future intention, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What makes something beautiful to you?
Ooh, what a nice question. Yeah, it feels like maybe there are two genres. One would be a little more like visual aesthetics, and the second one would be anything generally kind of like infused with love and care. Which maybe those things aren't so different. Maybe the first is kind of a subset of the second. But let's see. I feel like a lot of my life right now, like something that I kind of shied away from saying when you asked what I'm doing with my time, is I'm spending a lot of time doing emotional processing, just processing a long backlog of stuff that built up over the course of my life so far. And yeah, kind of hitting pause and processing through a lot of it. And the way that I see what I'm doing with my time there is that if you think of all of the emotions that you have over the course of your life that don't get processed, all of the things that hit you in a certain way that just get like added to the backlog, it feels like all of that was getting carried around on my body. And what I'm doing now is clearing space. And with that spaciousness, it will allow me to have that much more spaciousness, both as a therapist and body worker, and also just as a person in the world, you know, with my loved ones and my dog and people that I interact with on the street and everything. And the more spaciousness and emotional availability that I have, the more that I can be there for people. And these things, I really do think these things, the way that we treat other people and show up for other people, I think that if we really commit to doing that in a loving and positive way, that those feelings, that positive energy kind of bubbles out in a pretty big way. And yeah, I would call that's a big part of beauty for me, is showing up in a loving and positive way in the world, day to day, as much as possible. Not in a way where you're like beating yourself up about it or setting some crazy standard, but like as a general commitment and orientation in life, to beauty, to love, to warmth, to honesty. Yeah, I when I was younger, let's see, I'm trying to think, like I used to live in DC. I think I left like 3 years ago. I lived there for 5 years after college, and I lived in this studio apartment that was like very Spartan. It was, I mean, it was a great apartment in terms of like where it was, and it even had this like tiny cute little patio, which is hard to come by in DC. But it just, I had like nothing on the walls. It was very much like the stereotype for like a young bachelor pad or something. Like it was very mass. You would, I think if you looked at it, you would assume that a guy lived there. I just had no sense of like interior decoration or design or like intentionality in terms of like what I wanted my home surroundings to look like. I didn't even have a couch. I used to just like sit on my bed to watch TV. Yeah, it was not great. It was not great. Jane, what was going on there visually? So I think, yeah, it's nice to like think about too, just how much your surroundings affect how much the exterior affects the interior. There was a quote that I heard that I think is an AA thing, like cluttered room, cluttered mind, or cluttered space, cluttered mind, something like that. Yeah, I think that would be where the visual beauty, which is a little newer to me, kind of plays into my life as well, is like in this quest to be doing beautiful, loving things with as much of my time and energy as possible. I think the surroundings, my personal surroundings, play into that a lot as well. That was kind of a rambly answer. Did that answer your question?
Oh, I don't care. I loved hearing all of that. I forgot the question.
Cool.
That makes perfect sense if you're sort of prioritizing in general, like a positive, loving, helpful energy towards everything in your life. Having like your environments, just so greatly affects, your mindset or your brain and different things. So like having a more beautiful home or living a space would somehow, in ways you can't measure, translate to having a higher level of, love and positivity and, all the things you care about, these positive emotions and expressions in your just day-to-day existence.
Yeah.
Mm. I also enjoyed like your dichotomy there of like beauty can come from aesthetics and or love and care. Yeah.
Hmm.
I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, wait, is everything beautiful? Is that possible?
Hmm.
Am I being too generous there? Because I was trying to think like, what is an example of a clearly not beautiful thing? And I was thinking like, maybe not a great example, but like, say like a flickering light bulb. It's like kind of annoying. Like, be on or off light bulb, stop flickering. Then I was like, wait a minute,
Hmm.
that flickering bulb could be beautiful too. Like, oh, look how
Hmm.
it just like is, energetic and chaotic like that. That could be beautiful as well, even if it's like worse than
Hmm.
either an off or an on bulb. A flickering bulb could have some beauty as well. Analogize that to any potentially non-beautiful thing.
Oh, that's a total bong rip thought. I love it.
We are.
Bruh, is everything beautiful?
This is an extremely deep discussion here. Yeah, let's play along. Is there anything that comes to mind like this is clearly not beautiful? Anything that comes to mind for you?
If you have one in mind, go for it.
Oh, it's like murder is probably not that beautiful, right?
Yeah, I was thinking like if I was defining beauty as acts infused with love, I guess it would be the opposite, acts infused with hatred. I almost said ugliness, so that's funny. Yeah. What's not beautiful? Ugliness. um yeah, the opposite stuff that's bringing people down, hurting people, intentionally malicious, greedy. Yeah, I think there are probably plenty of examples.
Right, right. I totally ignoring, just trying to be focused on positives here. But yeah, a person's intentions, if they're having some, selfish, malicious intent, that could manifest non-beautiful things for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Okay, I want to go on to your next tweet. On May 12th, 2021, you tweeted, "At some point, you stop trying to constantly prove to yourself and those around you that magic is real and simply act on it."
Yeah, and by you I mean me. um yeah, I wonder if this will ring true for you or any listeners. It's certainly been the case for me of like there seems to be quite a pipeline in our part of Twitter of like scientific materialists, rationalists, etc. to like I don't even know what post-rat means, but I think it means like more magic leaning folks. That was certainly a part of my journey over the last couple of years. Is like I found this part of Twitter through Ayla, very much like rationalist type people, and then I started discovering more magical people, and I also moved to Asheville, which is like a very magical hippie town, and it just started opening my mind up to a lot of things that I had never thought, like I had never considered as even possible, or yeah, what am I trying to say? I guess I hesitate to give like really specific examples because I don't want to claim any specific ontologies with this. It's sort of just opening my mind to the possibility of like we were talking about manifestations earlier, like if let's say you like go about specifically trying to manifest something and you write about it and you do everything you can to bring that about, and then it comes about in a way that feels like you have this like amazing synchronicity around it, and it feels like too good to be true, and you just like want to go on Twitter and be like, oh my god, look, this thing actually happened. I didn't think I would be able to manifest this, and I did. And like I guess that was what I meant from like, oh wow, I didn't think that this thing was possible. And when it happens, I want to like go shout it to everybody, like, look at this crazy thing that happened in this like amazingly synchronistic way. And then like that sort of just becomes a commonplace experience for you, and you start to realize that like the power that you have to bring things about and make changes, and like it starts to just become a part of your normal experience instead of like, wow, this like incredibly magical thing happened, like isn't that weird, slash like acknowledging the like, yeah, how incredible it is, but also still not really believing that like these things are possible. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm curious, do you think this has any overlap with the concept of doing things to expand one's, if you know this term, like one's luck surface area. It's sometimes mentioned on Twitter.
Oh, I haven't heard about that. What would be the luck surface area?
Oh, it's just like, as with these magical things, you can't necessarily control everything that
Right.
the result of what you do and or what happens to you in life, but you can take actions to sort of attract or facilitate a higher rate of positive random events as opposed to
Yeah.
not taking action and being more, I don't know, submissive to whatever happens to you in life. You can, this phenomenon is called like, it's on Twitter, like the luck surface area. I forget who never coined it or first discussed it, but that seems like potentially a way to manifest or attract, as you're framing it, more magical things that might otherwise be written off as like coincidences.
Totally. That seems like a good definition for magic too, of like increasing the surface area of possibility of what you're trying to make happen, because like you say, you can't control all the conditions, and so it's just sort of like positively affecting as many conditions as you can. I think another example that's coming up is stuff with like my energy body, whereas like when I first started to have experiences where it was like, oh, this is like an energy body thing, I've heard of this, is this really happening, did I imagine this? And then like the more and more like somatic awareness type stuff that I've done and emotional processing, it's become like a really everyday part of my experience. And that's just happened to me a number of times with things that used to seem really like crazy or woo or silly or ridiculous to me when I was in a much more rigidly scientific rationalist place.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like, are you regularly experiencing, quotes, magical phenomena just with your energy body? Is that accurate?
Yeah, magic is a hard word to use. I guess the way that I think of magic now is just like stuff that is hard for us to explain
Hmm.
for now. It's like probably potentially all very explainable things. We just don't necessarily like have the words for it yet, or have the like established scientific theories for it yet, or whatever. But yeah, in terms of energy body stuff, yeah, it's a very regular experience for me now.
Hmm. Another term for this might be woo.
Yeah.
All these things we don't quite understand or have a firm grasp of. I happened upon this great phrase talking with friends just last week. The concept of someone's woo stack,
I saw that on Twitter.
coding like a
Yeah.
like a tech stack, but
Yeah.
for woo. So I'm curious. You just like list what is your current woo stack?
Can you give me an example of like what would your woo stack be, or someone or like just an example one? It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be yours.
Oh, I have no idea what woo is the problem. But I saw when I asked this, people respond with things like John Vervaeke, Rob Burbea, internal family systems, astrology. Um,
Hmm.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember. Like people said, like lifting is a woo thing, which I wasn't sure about, but okay.
Yeah, this is like now I'm like super thrown off by what people mean by woo. Like Rob Burbea is woo? I don't know. I don't know that much Burbea, but yeah, and sometimes I feel like that word has a really negative association, and so I don't use it very often, but it could also be the type of thing where like people are taking it back and trying to like establish positive associations with it. I don't know. But let's see. What would mine be? What would mine be? Is it just my whole life at this point is woo? Let's see. I'm big on internal family systems. I'm actually about to record a conversation with Chao Chu next week where we talk about meta therapies. So we're going to try to like hash out the way that we both combine all these different therapy modalities in our practices, which like probably most therapy modalities are already meta therapies because they yeah were conceived by like pulling together pieces from other therapies. But anyway, massage, internal family systems, inner child work, I don't know what that is called specifically, but I do a lot of that. I do something sometimes. This is pretty woo, I guess. It's sort of like some magic practices call it like a corridor practice. I guess you could also call it like timeline repair. it's sort of like going back into memories in the past and changing them in small ways. Let's see, what else do I do that's woo? I do a lot of energy stuff. I have some friends that are energy workers, and they do a lot of cool energy things for me, the kind of thing that would have like totally blown my mind 2 years ago. Yeah, that feels like pretty a lot of my woo stuff these days.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And it matches with what I've seen of your tweets and you being vulnerable on the timeline. Okay.
Yeah, I try to be pretty open about it. There's maybe like one or two woo things that I choose not to discuss on the timeline because it just feels like, I don't know, a little info hazardy or just a little too vulnerable for me. But like in general, I try to be super open about it.
Hmm. Well, just request after we're recording. I would love to, if you're willing to share, hear the info hazard, but no pressure.
Totally. Yeah, let's do it. Remind me.
Okay. Let's finish then by moving on to your next tweet. On May 20th, 2021, you tweeted, anyone else use cute little nicknames when conversing with each chakra?
Did I give any examples?
No, you didn't.
Oh my God, I forgot that I tweeted that. That's so sweet. Oh my God, like mid 2021 Jane was just like so incredibly wholesome on the timeline. Oh my God.
And we love to see it.
Yeah, we do. I have a super sweet photo as my display picture right now. That's me when I was like 6 or something. But I don't think I'm as quite as like wholesome and adorable on the timeline right now as I used to be. So yeah, thanks for reminding me that I could go back to being that, just like unabashedly wholesome. Let's see. Yeah. I chakras. There you go. That's part of my woo stack for sure. Yeah, so as part of like the emotional processing stuff that I do and the energy stuff, a lot of it ends up being, finding stuff in these specific parts of my body, my physical body, my energy body, etc., that line up with the chakras. And there's a lot of like what feels like discussion between that part of my body and then me, whatever the me is, whoever is mediating all of these chakras, all of these different, internal family, like my IFS parts, etc. It's sort of like someone who's running the meeting and has to be considering all these different needs and wants and things. And I guess two examples that come to mind would be my heart and my gut. So when you think about like what you want to do, your desires, it's like it's not always super straightforward what you want, right? Like sometimes you have conflicting desires. Sometimes you want to do something, but you also feel really tired, or you just feel lazy or low energy or whatever. And so like, how do you decide what you really want to do? And maybe one of your chakras wants something and one of your chakras wants something else. Like, what do you do in that situation? And I guess what I try to do is like be led by my heart, which first meant like coming into contact with my heart so that there's even something there that I could hear and listen to. And now I feel like that is mostly pretty established, and it's like a matter of remembering to check in and feel into that and like sort of like leave that communication channel open. And yeah, so when it comes to like, it's also hard sometimes to tell between what is like what is like a valid intuition and a valid desire versus what is like a coming from fear or tension or a trauma response. So that's also what I'm trying to get at here through some of these communications is like, what is like the underlying thing that is really me that wants to be expressed versus like something that just needs to be processed and worked through and healed. But yeah, so when I it's a little embarrassing, but when I have some of these like check-ins and conversations and stuff, I'm just so sweet and like loving, and just like, it's because so much of it is inner child type stuff too, that it's just like it's just, when you're talking to like a scared 6-year-old version of yourself, like why wouldn't you just like be incredibly sweet and loving and wholesome and use a lot of like pet names and just be over the top adorable, you know? So I do that a lot when I talk to my IFS parts and my heart chakra and my, you know, whatever else it might be. Yeah, it's funny now when I think about like if I'm trying to talk to my gut, an example with that would be like, what do I want to eat? And you can actually like the gut one is harder for me. I don't find that like channel to be as open in general as it is between just like trying to communicate with my heart. But like I would, if I can get a message about like what I want to eat, am I actually hungry? Is it something else? Yeah, I don't have this like same feeling of my gut being quite as like the communication there wouldn't feel like it would maybe be a little less over the top wholesome and like using baby voices and stuff. I don't know. The gut just has this feeling to me of being like more like powerful and strong and stuff. And so maybe it would be a little less of like sweet little baby type pet names. But yeah.
I loved hearing all of that.
I think we could just use this answer as my woo stack answer.
With the gut, isn't there a thing where like you have a second brain in your gut? Is that a thing? Is that woo? I feel like that's some claim, right? There's a lot of like
I don't think that's woo at all. I think there's a lot of science that backs that up, and I think there's like a lot more science to be done there. Isn't there something about like science? Yeah, I don't know. It's like the number of like dopamine receptors that we have is like we have more in our gut than we do in our brain or something. I mean, it's in so many cultures and societies, it's like kind of thought of as like the center of your being and where you move from and where all of your strength and, you know, like decision power comes from. So yeah, it definitely does seem to me like a potential second brain, although I don't know how true that is in our culture. I've been working on this for a long time and I still feel like my connection with my gut is very minimal. It feels blocked a lot. With the exception would be sometimes I get psoas massage done or just abdominal massage in general when I go in for a massage. It's not like a standard part of a massage package. You would kind of have to talk about it specifically in advance of the massage. But when I get stomach massage done, then I'll feel like sort of like a newfound ability to connect with my gut afterwards. And then similarly, when I do psychedelics, usually there will be like a 1 or 2 week period afterward where that connection is more open. But in general, it feels pretty murky to me. And I wonder if that's the case with like a lot of people in our society, especially when you think about like the American relationship with food. I think that can be like for me personally, it's a really big blocker is like if I'm overeating or just eating really shitty food, it seems like it muddies the waters a lot in terms of that connection. And that's pretty common for us Americans. So I don't know how much it actually is functioning as a second brain for a lot of us, but I do think it really has that potential. I think it also just houses a lot of trauma for a lot of people too, which blocks a lot of its potential.
You're so embodied. It's so great.
I'm talking about how murky my gut connection is.
Right, but even the fact that you're noticing
that I can notice that it's murky.
Some people go through their whole lives, I imagine, not even acknowledging their gut or what it might be telling them.
Well, thank you for the observation. I appreciate it.
Are you willing to share any of your chakras nicknames? Cute little nicknames for them?
I don't have like standard go-to nicknames, but like I call myself Sweet Baby Jane a lot. That's pretty embarrassing. I talk to myself. Wait, is there a sound effect coming? Is it? I thought I saw you like reaching for one. Okay. Yeah, I talk to myself all the time. I talk to myself out loud as much as possible. I just find it to be like, in terms of a lot of processing stuff, it's just so much better than saying things in my head, and also better than writing things. It's like there's something about the resonance, like capacity that just like goes way up for me when I say things out loud and then hear myself saying them. So yeah, I talk to myself constantly and I call myself Sweet Baby Jane. Cancel me for it, Twitter. I dare you.
Uh,
That was the sound effect for Sweet Baby Jane. That sounded like an elevator ding.
fine, fine.
This girl is on fire.
Oh my god. Thank you. That's more like it.
I was trying out a new one there, and now I know. Not really appropriate. That just elevator ding. Oh my God, Sweet Baby Jane. That is cool how like talking out loud. It makes perfect sense. Like talking out loud has a greater effect than writing or thinking. That's very cool.
Yeah. Do you know the bioemotive framework at all?
It's not part of my Woo stack. I've been.
There you go. That was like one of the first things in my Woo stack. Oh, shadow work, I guess probably I would put on my Woo stack also. Um, yeah. Doug Tatarin is the guy who came up with the biomotive framework. He's awesome. He's on Twitter. I heard about it from Chow Chu a while ago. Anyway, yeah, that was something I learned from there. It's like when I was first starting to like get close enough to my emotional landscape to like really be able to tell what was what in terms of emotions, like I heard from the bioemotive framework that if you're trying to, you're feeling something, you don't know what you're feeling. He has like a list of like core emotions and then maybe like secondary ones. I don't really remember the framework. I haven't looked at it in a while, but like you can like go through and say them aloud, and when you say it, you'll be able to feel in your body if that's it or not. Like I am sad, I am ashamed, I am scared. So like if you feel something you don't know what, you can try saying them, and probably at least one of them will resonate in your body in a certain kind of way, and it'll help steer you in the direction of actually processing it once you know what the feeling is. So I think I probably got it from that, and then just started doing it with like everything. And it's part of the beauty of living alone for me, is that I don't have to feel like a lunatic talking to myself all the time.
Hmm. That's so cool. Yeah, living alone is pretty top, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Any other nicknames, Sweet Baby Jane?
None that are coming to mind, none that are consistent enough that like I just am like in general just super lovey-dovey with like especially the IFS part stuff. Like for whatever reason, for me personally, a lot of my stuff tends to be inner child work. It just seems to be a way that my psyche communicates with me, and maybe it won't always be that way, but like other people talk about sometimes like having lots of archetypal stuff come up for them, and like their king or queen, or like a lot of like animal stuff, or like their interior landscape will look like nature landscapes, like they have waterfalls and volcanoes and rainforests and all this stuff in their interior. And for me, it just seems like it's just inner child. So that tends to be a lot of my stuff. And yeah, I don't think I'm doing maybe the nickname thing quite so much as I was when I tweeted that, but I do just try to be super lovey-dovey and warm and maternal generally with the parts that I find.
Hmm. That's so beautiful. And I do love like the sweet nickname, just because it's one of my favorite things I see on Twitter, like people calling each other sweet, whether it's either, sincere or like whatever, sarcastic or facetious. Like it hits every time for me. It's so good.
What would yours be?
My chakra nickname?
Or just one for yourself?
I can't think of an answer. I'm not this embodied.
We'll leave this as an exercise for the listener. What will everybody's personal sweet nickname be? Or what would everyone come up with one for Loopy?
I love it. Okay. Next tweet. On December 15th, 2021, you tweeted, "You guys, stop laughing. This is serious. We gotta," checks notes, "cultivate joy."
God, it's nice to be able to laugh at my own jokes. I genuinely think that one was really funny. I'm very proud of that. Yeah, well done, December 2021, Jane. Yeah, what's the story there? Okay, here's something that I find happening all the time in the last couple of years. It's like I'll notice something that I'm not able to do. Like yeah, I'll notice something cool that other people are doing that just feels like, oh, I don't think my brain does that, or I don't think like it doesn't seem like part of my constitution or my makeup. Like maybe that's just not a thing I can do. Here's an example, like visual thinkers. I've always been a pretty verbal person. My family is a very verbal family. A lot of good writers in my family, very into, yeah, like grammar and stuff, and not a lot of like visual artists or anything like that. When I was a software developer, I noticed that a lot of people I worked with seemed to be really good systems thinkers, and that there seemed like some overlap between systems thinking and visual thinking, sort of almost like maybe they were seeing in their mind's eye what a system looked like visually, kind of as they were designing it. And I didn't really feel like I could do that. I just felt like so word oriented that that's what, like when I thought through the logic of designing a system, I did it all in words. And so it was like, I also noticed that like the people who seemed, there were a lot of people around me who had very complex and interesting dreams. And they had these like really vivid, visually complex dreamscapes. And like, I did not have dreams like that at all. My dreams were very basic visually and tended to be about like the things that were being said. And so, yeah, I just wondered about that. And I was a little envious, like, why are my dreams so boring? Why can't I see more stuff in my mind? Why am I so word oriented? And I started to think that visual thinking was something that, like, a skill that I really needed to develop. Like I would need to like sit down and go about like developing this capacity. And like, yeah, I didn't really know how to do it. The person I was dating at the time suggested that I just start like watching videos about how a car engine works, because then I would like, yeah, I could watch the whole system like play out and sort of like let my brain flex that muscle and develop it. And it sounded like a good idea. I don't think I actually did it because, like, God, that sounds torturous to me, honestly. I just don't care how a car engine works. But what I find like with a lot of these things is that it feels like it's going to be some process of like effortfully developing a skill. And then it just turns out that like we have these innate abilities and capacities that sort of need to be unblocked, that like somewhere along the line they got blocked. And if you can uncover it, it's already there and it doesn't have to be effortful. And that's really been true for me in terms of visual thinking and imagination and dreams. Like that stuff has started to become unblocked for me, I would say, in the last couple of years, and it didn't have to be effortful at all. I mean, the more that I do it now, the more that that capacity continues to open. But I'm not, yeah, it's really like it doesn't feel effortful. It's more just something that happens. And so I think I was trying to sort of like point at the silliness of that process in that tweet. It's like if you feel like your life is a little joyless or like a little overly serious, which like maybe for me it's been a theme of like things feel very serious for me and I forget to like play and like just like embrace the joy. So it's like I don't need to go about very effortfully cultivating joy and making a list of things I can do to experience joy. Like, I think there's a lot of joy available to me that I can sort of just open up to and embrace. And like, yeah, when I'm out with my dog, like walking through a grassy field, I can just like play tag with her and embrace my inner 6-year-old and be silly and flap my arms like a bird and play. Like I don't need to like in a very adult like ambitious way create a to-do list of joyful activities. So yeah, in fact I think that tends to like negate the joyfulness to go about it so effortfully. Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to point at there, is that like for me personally, a lot of times the thing that feels like it's missing, it's something I already know how to do and I'm able to do if I can notice what is getting in the way of it and release that.
This feels like, again, like unblocking yourself, or just like giving yourself permission to, I don't know, like lower the activation energy to experience joy. Like you don't have to like schedule flapping your arms or embracing your inner child. You can just do it whenever.
Totally. I love the word that you use, permission. Yeah, because I do think that that is key for a lot of these things. Like why does it feel like we don't have permission in the first place? That's a good question. Why do we feel like we need permission? But we totally do. I do in a lot of ways. It feels like I need permission to do things, and I don't realize ways I'm not allowing myself. I'm not giving myself permission. Yeah, I think that's a really great point.
One way the permission thing has been, I guess, unclear for me personally is I'm very good about permissioning myself by myself, but when in communication or the presence of someone else or other people, I felt like some difficulty or tension with permission there, in the sense of, it's kind of like my perfectionist attitude coming out, but like, you know, what's the right amount to share or be vulnerable? How do I, both express myself, but not, impose some negative experience on anyone else, which is,
Yeah.
so strict and
Yeah.
rigid. It's okay to give someone a bad experience. But the permission for me is more difficult to grasp or come to peace with, when in the context of being with other people.
Totally. Yeah, I really get that. It's a hard balance to find, being authentic without like going too far, being too much, sharing too much. I relate to that. I think it's I hear you.
And I know, again, thinking out loud, like the solution is probably just to be incremental about it. Like if vulnerability is on a scale from like 0 to 100, start with like 5 vulnerability, then maybe like 8 and 14 and 20, and gauge with every sort of incremental step, how are the people responding to it. But that feels very unnatural to me. I kind of like to like get to the point, or like, go to the destination. So like I'm like, hey, here's vulnerability 75. Oh, is that too much? All right, we'll step back to like 30. How's that? Which, is potentially selfish and not respecting sort of the other person's state of mind or what they want from the conversation.
Well, I definitely relate to the oversharing thing. When I was a developer working in a tech company, I felt like I was chronically oversharing just because it was not an environment where people tended to like share really personal stuff a lot. And I just like, oh, I just want to say this stuff. I spend so much of my time here every day. When am I supposed to just not share stuff about myself all the time? But yeah, it was a little chronically overshare-y. But I guess I would just ask you, like, if you have, and this is potentially like not necessarily expecting an answer, could be a rhetorical question, but just like, are there specific relationships in your life where you feel extremely safe and just like able to like really be yourself? Because those could be the ones where you can really, they could be like your playground with this, where you can just really test out what it's like to be your vulnerable self, your emotional self, like at all of these different levels, and see kind of how it goes, and just have the experience of like sharing some of your deepest, darkest stuff and being fully accepted and held in that, which I think is an invaluable experience that everybody should get to have at some point. Yeah, I think it becomes a little easier to modulate that with like general relationships, other less intimate relationships, when you do have the ones where like anything and everything is welcome.
Yeah, that makes sense, because like in those more intimate relationships, there's going to be like this shared context understanding of like, more and more acceptance of the other person in their entirety, like all the flaws and vulnerabilities and ways they make you mad or whatever. Like it's all still like on top of this like background or foundation of like, love.
Yeah, a lot of trust there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, glad I said the word permission.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, next tweet. On January 11th, 2022, you tweeted, "A lot of the ground under my feet has been crumbling recently. The two things that still feel unshakably good are love and balance."
Ooh, this kind of feels like a vulnerable one. What did I mean there? Yeah, I still think about this one a lot because it still rings very true for me. And I think Robbie Palmer replied and asked what I meant by balance, and I still have not responded. And I'm still thinking about like how do I respond to that because I have like a very felt sense of what I mean there about balance, but I haven't really put it into words yet. So maybe I'll try to do that now. So yeah, a lot of the kind of emotional processing stuff that I'm doing means yeah, and on a similar theme, what we were just talking about with unblocking things, like a lot of this emotional processing work just feels like peeling back layers of an onion. And it's like there's all of these little protective mechanisms that we build around ourselves throughout our lives based on the experiences that we have and ways that we get hurt and like things that we're told we're not supposed to do, and ways of seeing the world and interacting with the world that make it feel safer and make us feel better about ourselves. Like, I guess you could call them ego structures too. I don't know, I have like mixed feelings about the word ego and the connotations that it has. I prefer to like see it in the light of protective mechanisms, people just like wanting to feel safe more than anything. And I think a big part of what I'm trying to do now is peel back some of those layers and remove some of the protective mechanisms that are like not serving me, blocking my connection with reality and like the present moment and what's really there. And yeah, it can be destabilizing sometimes. I mean, there's plenty of talk in like our part of Twitter about the dangers of meditation. You know, there have been especially some news cycles news cycles in terms of Twitter cycles about people who go on long Vipassana retreats and have psychotic periods or whatever. When you start messing around with these psychotechnologies, I guess you could call them, it can be really destabilizing, and things that you thought were yourself or your personality turn out to be defense mechanisms or protective structures. And I think I can't point to exactly what I was talking about when I said the thing about the ground underneath me crumbling, but I think the sense, what it brings up for me now is just a lot of things that felt to me like given. It was a given, or it was the way things were always going to be, or relationships that I would always have in my life, or aspects of those relationships that would always be present. And then I worked through something and that thing changed. Like, so, I think it could happen with your values and your goals in life, right? You could think that you want to spend your whole life as a software developer, and then you heal something and realize it's not actually what you want to do with your life. I don't know that I ever thought I always wanted to be a software developer, but I certainly went through a period where I was still a software developer, and then I worked through some things in my personal life and my emotional life, and I felt like a lot of my motivation at work was gone, and that was awkward. that was an awkward period to still be in that job for whatever amount of time and feel like my motivation structure was completely changed. So that I think that's a good example of what I was getting at there, is like it's a really beautiful process, and it's also a destabilizing process, and can be scary in the sense that like your life can change very quickly, and things that you thought were kind of like unshakable pieces of you turn out not to be, and then the next day you wake up and it's not there anymore, and you're trying to like figure out how to keep going about your life without this piece. And you also notice how many other of the voices in your head that you're prone to listening to are actually the voices of hurt children, right? Or like, to say that in a less dramatic way, like yeah, it's just you start trying to look around for what's really you versus what's a protective mechanism, and it can be disconcerting how much of it is actually protective mechanisms, like protective mechanisms all the way down. For me at least, that's been a pretty common theme of like, yeah, it can be scary to notice that. And so when I have had trouble finding values or ways of orienting myself in life that feel very stable throughout this process, I just noticed that orienting towards love has felt consistently good for me. I haven't found ways that has changed in this process, and that doesn't always mean lovey-dovey, being nice to everyone. That very much includes acts of boldness, acts of boundary setting, things like that. I think, you know, that love is a pretty wide net that includes things that look a lot of different ways. But then balance, I guess, yeah, this is the one that's a little hard to describe, but I keep coming back to it. Is like, I find a lot of paradoxes, like being able to hold two things that feel like they're in conflict or they're paradoxical with each other, and being able to hold both as true. I find that to be very useful. And maybe that's part of like what doesn't work for me with the rationalist mindset. And that feels to me like a sort of balance. And then in terms of ideologies, that's another thing that I think changes constantly with this type of thing, is you'll get really into some ideology, some belief system, and then, you know, a month later, 2 months later, things have changed for you, and it's like that's thrown out the window, and there's some other belief structure that's really, really appealing at that point. And so trying to be very balanced, I think, and hold beliefs lightly. Yeah, this is like feeling very vague as I say it aloud, but it's hard to give specific examples. I mean, I guess like a good example would be in the bodywork studies that I'm doing, and I really appreciated in massage school. I felt like there was a very balanced approach to this, because one day we would be studying, you know, like Western physiology, and the next day we'd be studying Chinese medicine, which is a totally different framework and approach to the human body. And there aren't even, my Chinese medicine teacher was an American woman, and she was like saying that she had been through the whole Western medical education system, and she was working at some very prestigious cancer hospital before she decided to go to Chinese medicine school. And she said that when she first started studying Chinese medicine, she was trying to translate it into like Western ideas the whole time. Like, okay, what's the Western medicine equivalent of this? And at some point she just realized, like, okay, there's not, for a lot of this stuff, there is just, this is not like it's not like a language where you can directly translate this idea into this idea. They're just completely different frameworks and approaches to the human body. And so, yeah, it's very easy when trying to get into massage or body work or any study of the body and somatics to become really dogmatic about one specific belief system or approach and think that that is the one source of truth. Whereas, like, I think it serves people, or at least serves me, a lot better to familiarize myself with some of these approaches, but hold them all lightly and see what I find to be true when I put my hands on somebody and massage them and listen with my hands, and what do I hear? And there's all these education frameworks in the background that I can hold lightly and use to help. But that, what I guess what I'm trying to say is that would be an example of the way that I find balance to be a really useful value. And I haven't, as these various things have changed for me and various grounds under my feet have crumbled, I have never felt like, balance isn't the right thing here. Balance has failed me in this way. It's something that has felt consistently good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for saying all of that.
Thanks for listening. I am like, every time I get to the end of an answer, I feel embarrassed about like, wow, that was so rambling and like weird, and I don't know if that was like coherent at all, but it's fun to have this almost feels like a drafting space or something where I'm just like like throwing out a bunch of words and hopefully like trying to like throw some spaghetti against the wall and hopefully some of it'll stick and make some kind of sense. So
Mhm.
thanks for the prompts and questions.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and just like rambling's never a negative for me. Just knowing about someone's experience of life or their understanding of things is like one of the
Yeah.
most fulfilling activities for me, just to be able to listen and get a glimpse into someone else's, inner world and experience. It's always great for me.
Cool. Well, I think this podcast format is really nice too. Yeah, something about the like it's like reflecting on these little gems of wisdom or jokes or whatever it is that we decided were worth putting out to the world at some point over the years,
Mhm.
and then reflecting back on it later. It feels like a very fertile ground for exploration, so I appreciate it.
Okay. Next tweet. On April 3rd, 2022, you tweeted that energetic pressure cooker feeling.
Yeah, it always feels like using the word energetic on the timeline is like a little risky. Is it risky? Is that what it is? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, there's this feeling that I've had with my energy body a lot recently where it feels like my head's gonna explode. It happened for the first time. I haven't told Darby this, but I stayed with Darby one night when I was driving out this way. So I was living in Asheville, North Carolina until the end of 2021. I finished massage school in December and then I hung out for a couple of weeks. And then in early January, I left Asheville in my van with my dog. I bought a van for the trip and yeah, drove out first to Arizona. I was doing some training there and then I came to New Mexico. But I stayed with Darby one night on my way out here. And the night that I stayed with her, I don't know what it was, something about talking with her, I guess, or maybe it was just totally unrelated and coincidental. But yeah, it's interesting how like sometimes these things we talk to somebody and something kind of opens or changes in our experience, or it's almost like we get like a download from people. So I wonder if it was something like that. But that night I like laid down in her I was gonna say her guest room. She actually gave me her bedroom, which was very nice. Yeah, I laid down to go to sleep and something was happening in my head and like things were opening or something, but it just almost felt like my head was gonna explode. Like something was trying to like move up and out but couldn't fully. And so it not a comfortable feeling, just a lot of stuff happening up here, moving and changing. And that was the most pronounced time that it's happened, but it's been ever since then, it's been off and on this feeling of, yeah, sort of like a pressure cooker in my head feeling.
Hmm. Have you explored like different reactions or next steps, like when you experience that in the moment? Like, are there different things you do to respond to it?
I give myself scalp massages and that seems to help. Yeah, I'm like, so much of this energy stuff is still a mystery to me and I'm just beginning to put together the pieces, I think. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Like I think about fascia a lot now that I'm studying massage. Do you know what fascia is? It's connective. It's like a web of connective tissue in our body. So under our skin, between our skin and our muscles, there's this whole web of tissue that spans our entire body. And so every part of our body is connected to every other part of our body with this web. Like you could draw a path from any part of your body to any other part via this web. And there's actually, it's not just that, like it's at more layers than that. That's the superficial layer. But then like when you get deeper, every muscle is actually also wrapped in fascia. Our organs are wrapped in fascia, I think. It's like, so it's connective tissue and then it's also like a supportive protective web around various structures and it kind of like goes down many levels that way. But anyway, why did I bring up fascia? It has this interesting property to it where it like can change between a more liquid structure to a more solid structure and it's changing all of the time. Like it it's like based on a number of things, including like our feeling of safety. It's like a permeability thing, like how permeable do we want to be with our surroundings? And so it's very relevant with massage because there's this whole process at the beginning of the massage of like, when you put your hands on somebody first, you're like saying hello to their body, and you're kind of introducing their body to your body and your body to their body. And like, you don't just like come in with your first touch like an elbow deep into someone's back, right? Like you kind of like warm up and warm them up. And part of that is like saying hello to their fascia and establishing yourself as like a safe and loving and therapeutic presence so that their fascia is comfortable with you, and there's like a rapport and a relationship established where the fascia lets you in, because it really does change in consistency, and it liquefies and opens up and like lets you in, or it doesn't, and it solidifies and protects and keeps you out. And like it's a really interesting process there. And something I've noticed over this journey of embodiment that I've been on, I guess you could call it, is that so I also get the sense that our fascia holds a lot of our emotional memories, like even like, I mean, I really can't make this as like a solid claim, but the sense I get is like, even like when visual memories flash as I'm processing through an emotional thing, I wonder if that's coming from the fascia itself. But anyway, the fascia on my head, I think, used to be very taut a lot of the time. And part of the reason I think that is because of how sensitive I was to getting my hair pulled. Like if my hair got pulled even a tiny bit, it was like incredibly painful. And I noticed that wasn't the case for a lot of other people. And I also have been a traditionally like very in my head thinky person, which I think like in terms of like energy balance, it's like it's like a disproportionate amount of energy and activity and awareness just focused and like in my head. And I think that is changing now. And I think that like the fascia on my head and my scalp is getting softer and more open. And I just think that there's more movement happening here in general in terms of like my cranial bones, which is a thing that like craniosacral therapy is all about, making very small adjustments to the way that your cranial bones interface with each other, because they can get out of place and jammed in ways that affect us negatively. And I notice a lot more sensation in my head now that I never used to notice. I never used to feel it, and maybe it was there and I just didn't notice it, but I suspect that like there just wasn't as much. Like I notice as I'm reading something or being with certain people that like I'll feel things in different parts of my head in interesting ways, interesting patterns. And like I guess the woo description for that would be crown chakra energy. I don't feel like I have enough of a relationship yet where I can feel into like, oh, this part of my head is buzzing, it means this thing. I don't know. I'm just starting to become aware of those sensations and things. But anyway, that feels relevant. And so anyway, when I start to feel that pressure cooker feeling, it feels like energetic stuff is trying to happen. Things are trying to open up, but maybe some things are blocked in such a way that the energy is getting trapped up here. And scalp massage seems to really help just to like let things move out. Another thing that I noticed, I was getting a massage recently from a massage therapist in Santa Fe who I really, really like. And it was a great massage, but I was also just having a lot of thoughts happen the whole time. It was kind of like I was just sort of stuck in a very thought heavy mode. And then it was actually craniosacral, not massage. She started to do a little bit of work on like my upper chest. Yeah, right around like the base of my neck and my shoulders. And just from like opening up a couple of things there, all of a sudden it was like my thoughts just like stopped, just like turned off. And it sort of felt like there was something where whatever was happening up here in my head was just able to like move more fluidly throughout my body at that point. That like I had some tensions around this area. I'm pointing at like my neck and shoulders and upper chest. Some tensions there maybe that were just preventing a more even flow. And I think that's probably what's happening when I'm getting that energetic pressure cooker feeling. Like, if you want to use the framework of chi or prana or energy, which is what I have been saying a lot, like, I think that I have more in my body now than I used to because of how much I've opened up in the last year or two and just come more into alignment with myself. So I think that more of that energy is naturally preserved, but it also means that when there are blocks and tensions, I can notice them more readily because I have more energy to get trapped now, if that makes sense. And so, wow, I have completely lost track of where this started. What was the original tweet? Oh yeah, the energetic pressure cooker feeling. I feel like that was like, yeah, I have a lot of ideas there of what's happening and no concrete answers, but that's a whole bunch of ideas. There you go.
Wow. Yeah, that's so fascinating. The whole fascia concept, I didn't even know was a thing. Wow.
Do you ever get body work? Do you ever get massages or acupuncture or anything like that?
No, I don't. I'm missing out.
Yeah, there's a whole yeah, I mean it's not for everybody. If it's your thing, it's your thing. If it's not, it's not. But like there are a lot of massage therapists who specifically do fascial work. And for me, it's some of my favorite to give and receive. I think maybe sometimes with massage there can be an overemphasis on muscles, and yeah, like the fascia is just such there's so much richness there to work with, and it's sort of a first step before you even work with the muscles. So I love receiving fascia work, and I find it to be very fruitful when I do it for other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all this. It's amazing to hear all those experiences of tension up there and how you address it and everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. That was all the tweets I had. Before we wrap up, I would just love to know, Jane, what are your favorite things about your Twitter experience?
That's a great question. I have made some incredibly wonderful friends. Yeah, Tashin comes to mind immediately. My friends Hanjo and Ananda, they're like not super on Twitter anymore, but we're gonna live together in Taos for a couple of months starting soon. Tashin and I lived together in Santa Fe for a month. Like, it really is not just internet friends for me. Like, my internet friends are becoming my real life friends, and there's this whole community. And I think Vibe Camp probably shocked a lot of us in that way of like how good it ended up being and how much of a real like community feel there is there and can be, and we can really meet up in person and do wonderful things together. And I mean, we can do wonderful things together not being in person as well. The collaborations that you see coming out of Twitter is really special. Yeah, just getting to meet so many wonderful people and friends, mentors, teachers, communities. Yeah, I guess more recently, so the way that I was on Twitter for a while, once I started to once the like initial engagement started to happen, because I feel like there is that awkward period at the beginning where you're just like trying to make your way in and you're like kind of tweeting into the void and stuff. And so once I moved past that piece and started to actually develop some friendships, then it was like I spent a lot of my time just being on Twitter, chatting with people on there. And then more recently, I guess like around the start of 2022, I started moving into some more like designated online communities, like smaller communities with people that I met from Twitter. So I spend a little less time on Twitter now. And yeah, Twitter feels a little chaotic for me right now, and I'm not spending a ton of time on it. And I'm spending more time in some mostly Discord communities with people that I met on Twitter. And I'm really enjoying that. They're just a little more directed in terms of like intention and purpose. And yeah, getting to know people better that way through these smaller communities, and they're pretty much all people that I met from Twitter. So that's been an amazing pipeline for smaller, more concentrated, intentional online communities. So that's what's been really great about it for me. I guess also just the ability to process through a lot of emotional stuff. It's been really helpful for me that way. And it's kind of nice. There is a way in which it's harder to have online friends than in-person friends, because you miss out on a lot of the wonderful things about being in person, which is like getting to be around people's presences and their body language and getting to hug each other, and just all the wonderful things about being in person with people. But then there's also something that's really nice about it when, like, I find that, like, especially if I'm processing through something tough, I can be like a mess, just like in bed, disheveled, haven't showered in 4 days. Like, I'm just, a mess of a human, but I can still like go on Twitter and tweet about stuff and get like a ton of support from people. And then I can like go off Twitter again and just go back to being like a mess of a human. And there is something really nice about how low commitment it is, kind of. And you can just kind of like opt in, opt out anytime. And there isn't really like there's no like, okay, I'm going to go to a thing and be there for some number of hours. And that aspect of it. So yeah, especially because I process through a lot of shame stuff. I think it's just so helpful to be able to practice being myself more and sharing things openly. That was really hard for me for a long time. And I used to see people do it online and feel very jealous of them and just not know how to do it myself. So yeah, the friends, the smaller online communities that have popped up, and I think the ability to process difficult emotional things and receive a lot of support and hear about a lot of other people going through similar things has been amazing.
Yeah, a whole lot of that resonates. Yeah, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah.
Okay. Jane, thanks again so much for taking the time to talk with me today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Loopy. This was really, really fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, same here. All right, take care.
Bye.